Shabbat Shalom. No additional this Shabbat, as Hanukkah is now officially over. But that means we can go back to our focus, our emphasis on the Torah portion itself. Those of you that have been following along with my sermons for the past few weeks know that I have been trying to emphasize some of the unique characteristics that seem to define the major mover and shakers among the patriarchs, among the leaders of our people. We have talked about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that is usually where we leave off in our patriarchal listing, because after all, that is the quote that is most often heard. Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Velohei Yaakov. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. However, the reason why we hear that list in that order and that limitation is simply because that is a quote. That was a line that was said from God to Moses at the burning bush. That does not mean that we have nothing left to learn from those who came in the next generation, among the children of Yaakov, the children of Jacob, the 12 tribes, as displayed on the stained glass above me. But I want to focus tonight only on 2 of them. If we try to go through all 12, we'll be here till 12. But just 2 that seem very different and yet also teach a similar lesson, are reaching their pinnacle in this and next week's Torah portion. And those are Yosef and Yehuda, Joseph and Judah. Now, Joseph and Judah represent 2 very different extremes. Judah, of course, is the lion. He is the strong one. He is the leader. He is the pinnacle of the children of Leah. On the other hand, we have Yosef, who is, let's just say, not such a lion, at least in quite the same roaring leadership way in his youth. Instead, he is a spoiled, pampered child, somebody who is doted on by his father, clearly played as the favorite among all of the boys, and knows that he is the favorite, and does not exactly endear himself to his brothers, to say the least. As we saw in the previous week's Torah portion, he is so able to alienate them that they are willing to take and sell him into slavery. First, to murder him, but then slavery as their second best. And how they came to be in that place, and how they come to be where they both are in this week's Torah portion, is crucial for us to understand. Let us first see the character of Joseph. Was Joseph really such a bad guy? Well, in typical form, the Torah does not always give us extraneous detail, but what detail it tells us is enough to put together a picture of a young man who, like I said, knows that he is his father's favorite. Not only does he have his special clothing, but he also endears himself to his father while angering his brothers by bringing home the bad reports. He snitches on his brothers to his dad. But the thing that seems to truly aggravate his brothers are his dreams, the dreams of Joseph. Now, having a dream where you apparently, and we'll talk about this much more tomorrow, but apparently you are going to be the master of them all, well, we can be excused for having a dream like that. In the middle of the night, when it pops into our head while we are fast asleep, who can be held accountable for what images pop into their head? No. The problem for Joseph is not that he had the dream. The problem is that he told them his dream. And this is not only stupid, but arrogant. Imagine if you have had this dream and you are so blind to the animosity that this will create, to the resentment, the jealousy, the fear that it will generate among the others, that you just present it to them as though they should be happy for you that you have had this dream. This is a person who thinks only about himself. This is a person who sees a future that is bright for him and doesn't realize that for those around him, this is not going to be an ideal picture, that they are, in his dream, cast to the ground, subservient to him, bowing, scraping. This is not a person who thinks about how another will relate to what they are sharing. And what of Judah? Judah is a powerful leader of his brothers, when they decide to murder Joseph, Reuben intercedes enough to get him off the murder charge, but instead to throw him into the pit. But it is Judah who sits quietly leading his brothers in their picnic while Joseph sits in that pit waiting to die of starvation or exposure, that happens upon the bright idea, ignoring the cries of his brother. When he sees an opportunity walking by, he says, what do we gain by killing him? This would be the introduction in any moral person to the rest of a sentence that would say, why are we trying to kill our brother? How is this going to help us? But instead he says, why are we trying to kill our brother? How will we get rich off of this? Instead, let's sell him. It is far more profitable than murder. Judah does not understand the pain that Joseph is feeling either. Just as Joseph is unaware of the suffering that he is causing among his brothers, so too Judah is willing, perhaps in retaliation, to remain deaf to the cries and pleas of his brother, who is asking for some form of rescue, and certainly more than being sold into slavery. But Judah does not listen, he does not hear. Not exactly role models for our nation. But what do we see them experience? We see them each experience episodes in their lives that will throw this callousness into the dustbin and make them change their ways. For Joseph, this is, of course, being sold into slavery, but not just that. But being sold into slavery, he will have to serve in Potiphar's house, where false negative reports will be held against him, where he will be put into the lowest of all positions, into a jail, into a prison from which he has no hope and no chance to escape, where he will feel what it is like to be somebody that would be at the bottom of his feet in his dreams. And while there he will hear other people's dreams. He will listen to the dreams of the master chef. He will listen to the dreams of the master of the cups. And when he listens to their dreams, he begins to think, what are they afraid of? What are they looking for? What is it in their life that matters to them? How can I respond? How can I understand? How can I interpret their life in a way that will reflect a truth for them? Rather than interpreting and looking for his own glory in his dreams, he instead is patient. He is instead compassionate, even as he must deliver both good and bad news to the two of them. And of course, it is because of this transformation, no longer thinking only of himself, that he eventually opens up the door to his prison and escapes. Escapes both physically, as the cupbearer gives Pharaoh the good report, and Joseph is elevated to his eventual position, but also escapes the prison of his selfishness, when he finally begins to hear how others look at the world and what their dreams are. And for Judah, equally painfully, he must go through the experience of losing two of his own sons and fearing for the life of a third. He is a man that will have to face that greatest of tragedies, that greatest of pains, and still realize that life must go on. That you cannot be callous to those cries, you cannot silence that pain, but you must find a way forward to continue life and legacy, as unfolds in the story of Judah and Tamar. And how then does that become applied to his life? Where do we see him transformed? We see him transformed when he stands before, unknowingly, his brother Joseph, and realizes that Benjamin is now in danger. Another child of their father is in danger. And so he steps forward to defend him, to spare his father that grief, to save this child, this brother who is now the new favorite. The man who was deaf to the cries of his brother Joseph now hears the cry of his father and his brother Benjamin and acts to save them, even at risk to himself. No longer looking for self-profit, he is now doing everything he can to spare others the grief that he knows too well. This transformation of Joseph and Judah, who become the archetypes of the northern and southern regions of our people, show the path of tshuva, the path of repentance, where a person understands and admits their mistakes, seeks to remedy the damage they have caused, and then seeks to avoid such mistakes in the future, finding ways to behave that will not compound their previous errors. But so too it also shows the unity that these people find, that it is going past the ego, past the self, past looking only out for what you want in life, whether it be the fulfillment only of your dreams at the expense of others, or whether it be the filling of your pockets at the expense of others. Instead, understanding the depth of emotion that others also have, the complex and deep lives that they have, must be taken into consideration in all of your doings. And they set a pattern that will eventually lead to this full reunification of our people, for the unity that will allow us to become B'nai Yisrael, truly, the children of Israel united. Shabbat Shalom.